Everything Claressa Shields told you about becoming a better person was a lie, and I can prove it with receipts she typed with her own fingers, sent to a complete stranger, and then watched spiral across every blog on the internet before the sun came up. What happened this week is not a minor slip. It is not a bad day. It is a full structural collapse of every single promise Claressa Shields has made publicly for the last 6 months, and the most devastating part is that the woman at the center of the storm did not even have to lift a finger to cause it. Remy Ma just had to exist. She just had to show up somewhere looking incredible, receive public love from somebody Claressa Shields desperately wants approval from, and walk away completely unbothered. That alone was enough to send Claressa spiraling back into the exact behavior she swore she had left behind, the exact arguments she promised she was done having, and the exact kind of public meltdown that makes every single person watching wonder whether the woman who calls herself the GWOAT is actually winning anything at all outside of a boxing ring. So before we go any further, I need every single one of you to pay close attention because what I am about to walk you through is not just another celebrity drama cycle. This is a behavioral pattern exposed in real time, and by the time we reach the final section of this breakdown, you will understand exactly why Claressa Shields cannot stop herself, why Papoose keeps making choices that make everything worse, and why Remy Ma is quietly collecting the biggest victory of this entire saga without typing a single word to a single stranger online. Let us start with the moment that lit the fuse, because everything that followed traces back to one specific night, one specific concert, and one specific interaction that Claressa Shields was not part of and was never going to be part of. Cardi B is on her Little Miss Drama tour, and the shows have been massive. We are talking arena-level production and packed houses, the kind of cultural moment that reminds everybody who the real headliners are in female rap. During one of the New York stops, Cardi B brings Remy Ma into the building, and the interaction between them is not forced, is not manufactured, is not staged for content. It is genuine. Cardi B posts a video with Remy, they are hugging, they are smiling, the energy between them is the energy of two people who actually enjoy each other's company and do not need a camera to prove it. Cardi B adds a caption that makes the rounds immediately, tags Remy Ma directly, and the crowd's reaction to Remy at that show is something you cannot fake. They lose their minds. Remy Ma walks into that arena in Gucci from head to toe, not performing, not doing a set, just existing, and eats the entire room alive without opening her mouth. That is presence. That is a woman who has spent 2 decades building a brand that walks into a room before she does, and everybody felt it. Now here is the detail that nobody is sitting with long enough, and I need you to let this one marinate. Cardi B follows Remy Ma on social media. Cardi B does not follow Claressa Shields. Not a courtesy follow. Not a pity follow. Not a strategic follow. Nothing. Zero. And when you understand what that means, the entire dynamic snaps into focus. Cardi B, who is one of the biggest artists on the planet, who has the platform and reach Claressa Shields has been chasing through music releases and live streams and interviews for over a year, publicly aligns herself with Remy Ma and does not even acknowledge Claressa's existence in the process. That is not an accident. That is a signal. In the ecosystem of celebrity relationships, who follows whom is currency. It is endorsement. It is a public declaration of alignment. That distinction matters because Claressa Shields has been positioning herself as the woman who replaced Remy Ma, the woman who is the new chapter, the woman who has the man and the life and the future. But Cardi B, who actually moves the culture, looked at both of them and decided where her loyalty sits, and it sits with the wife, not with the woman who showed up after. So that is the backdrop. Cardi B publicly embraces Remy Ma, the crowd erupts, the internet catches fire, and the moment goes viral across every platform within hours. And that is when things take a turn that nobody could have predicted but everybody should have seen coming, because if you have been watching this situation long enough, you know that any moment involving Remy Ma receiving public love is a trigger for Claressa Shields, and this time was no different. But what makes this particular cycle more revealing than any of the previous ones is not what Claressa did. It is what Papoose did first, because his actions in this sequence are the ones that actually raise the most uncomfortable questions about what is really happening behind closed doors. Here is what went down. Papoose, who is still legally married to Remy Ma, was apparently watching coverage of the Cardi B concert online. Specifically, he was on a platform called T-Sis50, which for anyone who does not know is a hip-hop news and media site created by 50 Cent back in 2008. It started as a social network for fans and evolved into a gossip and news aggregator, and the fact that it is connected to 50 Cent is relevant because 50 Cent has his own history with this situation, his own commentary, and his own position in the broader narrative. Papoose was on that site, looking at coverage of the concert, and he found a video of Remy Ma at the show. He reposted it. He added captions to the repost, and in those captions he wrote about how sometimes you watch an artist perform and think they came out to the wrong song, but this time the choice was perfect. He called it his favorite, dropped several emojis including a middle finger, and added another caption describing the moment as looking really good, followed by heart, angel, crossed fingers, prayer, and fire emojis. And then he deleted the whole thing. The repost disappeared from his Instagram, and by the time most people realized what had happened, the original post was gone. But the internet does not forget. The internet screenshots everything. The internet builds cases out of deleted posts the way forensic teams build cases out of partial fingerprints, and in this situation, the screenshot of Papoose's repost was captured before it vanished, clearly showing the content came from TSIS50. It shows the source. It shows the platform. It shows that Papoose was not just casually scrolling but was actively engaging with content from 50 Cent's platform about his estranged wife's appearance at Cardi B's show. Now, you can interpret that in a few different ways. You could say he was simply reposting a clip he enjoyed, that the emojis were harmless, and that the middle finger was directed at nobody in particular. That is the generous read. But when you combine the fact that he deleted it with the fact that he was watching TSIS50 coverage of Remy in the first place, a different picture starts to emerge, and that picture is one of a man who is paying very close attention to what his estranged wife is doing, where she is doing it, and who is celebrating her while he is on the outside looking in. And that is the spark. Because once that screenshot started circulating, somebody decided to take it directly to Claressa Shields, and what happened next is the reason we are all here right now. A person, presumably a follower or a fan or possibly just somebody looking for a reaction, sent Claressa Shields a direct message on Instagram. They included screenshots showing mutual followers, likely to verify that they were messaging her real account. They sent her a video of Remy Ma performing at Cardi B's show, dressed in Gucci, looking confident and unbothered. They sent her the screenshot of Papoose's repost from TSIS50. And then they wrote a message that said, roughly, I guess they was at Cardi B concert together, followed by a laugh. Now, even from an objective standpoint, that is not exactly what the screenshot proves. The screenshot shows a repost from a media page, not evidence that Papoose and Remy Ma were physically at the same event together. A repost is a repost. It is content shared from one platform to another. It does not prove physical proximity. But the person sending that message was not interested in accuracy. They were interested in provocation. They wanted to see what Claressa Shields would do when confronted with the idea that Papoose might have been anywhere near Remy Ma, and they got exactly what they were looking for. Claressa Shields fired back immediately. Her response was aggressive, hostile, and deeply personal. She told the person to shut up, claimed that Papoose was at the house with her, that they were together right then and had been together the night before. But here is the question that immediately jumps out when you read that response. If your man is genuinely home with you, if everything is fine, if you are secure in your relationship and confident in your position, why are you in a stranger's direct messages at that hour arguing about where he was sleeping? Secure people do not do that. Secure people read a message like that, roll their eyes, close the app, and go to bed. They do not type responses to people they have never met trying to establish a timeline of their boyfriend's location. That behavior is not the behavior of a woman who is confident. It is the behavior of a woman who is terrified that the message might contain a grain of truth and feels compelled to stamp it out before it spreads. The person on the other end was not finished. They responded by saying something to the effect of, "We know your mouth is a lie," followed by a laugh, and Claressa Shields immediately escalated further. She responded with language that I will not reproduce verbatim here, but that included a derogatory slur and profanity, and in doing so, she demolished every single promise she had made about changing her approach, growing as a person, and leaving the negativity behind. This is the same woman who sat across from Angela Yee on a podcast and looked into the camera with total sincerity and said she was done with this. She said she was turning 31, that she had reflected, that she was more grateful now, more humble, more focused on what mattered. She said she was not going to argue with random people online anymore. She said she was stepping away from the direct messages, stepping away from the noise, stepping away from drama. And based on what we just watched happen, that promise lasted approximately as long as it took for somebody to mention Remy Ma's name in the same sentence as Papoose's. That is the pattern, and it is a pattern that has become impossible to ignore. Every time Claressa Shields declares that she is above the fray, every time she announces a new era of peace and maturity, every time she tells an interviewer that she has grown, the very next cycle of Remy Ma-related content drags her right back into the mud. It is almost as if the promise is not real. It is almost as if the announcement of growth is itself a performance, a PR move designed to reset public perception before the inevitable crash-out happens again. And the crash-out always happens again, because the trigger is not going away. Remy Ma is not disappearing. Cardi B is not going to stop showing love to people she genuinely cares about. 50 Cent is not going to shut down T-Sis 50. The environment that produces these triggers is permanent, which means Claressa Shields' ability to resist them is the only variable, and based on the evidence, that variable is not holding. Now let us move to the next batch of messages, because the exchange did not end there. It continued, and it continued in a way that reveals even more about how Claressa Shields operates when she feels cornered. In the subsequent messages, she pointed out that Papoose had only reposted content from T-Sis 50, which is a media page, and she asked the person if they were really that dumb, essentially arguing that a repost from a news platform does not prove anything about physical attendance. And she is technically right about that. A repost from a media page is not proof of presence. But the irony of her using that explanation is thick enough to cut with a knife, because while she is busy explaining the mechanics of reposting to a stranger, she is also inadvertently confirming that both she and Papoose are paying extremely close attention to everything involving 50 Cent's platform and everything involving Remy Ma. They are watching. They are monitoring. They are tracking what gets posted, who posts it, where it comes from, and how fast it spreads. That is not the behavior of people who have moved on. That is the behavior of people who are deeply invested in tracking the movements and public reception of somebody they claim to be done with. And there is another layer here that made the exchange even more surreal. Claressa Shields, in the middle of arguing with this person, used a phrase that many people immediately recognized as something commonly associated with Remy Ma. The phrase about being dumb, the cadence, the attitude, the whole energy of the response sounded like it was borrowed directly from Remy's playbook, and multiple people pointed that out online. The woman supposedly replacing Remy Ma keeps sounding more and more like her, keeps mirroring her energy, keeps adopting her patterns of speech and confrontation. Whether that is conscious or subconscious is up for debate, but the result is that Claressa Shields keeps inadvertently proving that Remy Ma lives rent-free in her head, occupying space that a woman who was actually secure would have emptied out a long time ago. The exchange kept spiraling. The person messaged back saying that Pap posted and Remy was there. Claressa Shields responded by calling them dumb again, insisting it was a reposted video from the T-Sis 50 page, and repeating that she and Papoose had been at home together the previous night. The person fired back with what is probably the most cutting line of the entire exchange. They said, "I am the dumb one. I am not the one involved with a married man. You are the dumb one." And that line hits because it skips past all the surface-level arguing about reposts and concerts and location tracking and goes straight for the structural issue that Claressa Shields has never been able to adequately address. Papoose is still married. Not separated on paper. Not in the process of divorce. Married. Legally, publicly, and in every way that matters to the courts, to the culture, and to the people watching this unfold. That is when Claressa Shields pulled out the line she always pulls out, the line that has become her signature deflection, the line that she deploys every single time somebody points out the inconvenient fact that her boyfriend has a wife. It is called divorce. She says it with confidence, with attitude, as if uttering those 3 words somehow resolves the situation. But here is where the public continues to push back, and rightly so. If there really is a divorce, where is it? Where is the finalized decree? Where are the court proceedings? Where is the visible progress in the legal system? People have been asking this for months, and the answer never changes, because there is no answer. There is no divorce decree. There are no active hearings that anyone can point to. There is no parenting plan filed for the minor child that Papoose and Remy Ma share. Nothing has moved. Nothing has progressed. The filing, if it exists at all, is sitting in a drawer somewhere collecting dust while Claressa Shields waves it around like a trophy she has not actually won yet. And people have compared this to another claim that Claressa Shields made publicly that also never materialized. She talked about a cease and desist against 50 Cent. She referenced legal action. She made it sound like paperwork was in motion, like lawyers were involved, like consequences were coming. And then nothing happened. No cease and desist materialized. No legal action was taken. No paperwork surfaced. It was the same pattern. A bold public claim designed to project authority and control, followed by absolutely zero follow-through, and the audience started noticing that pattern and pointing it out every time she makes another claim about the divorce. The user kept pressing. They wrote that if that was really Papoose, he would not have reposted that content. Claressa Shields responded with laughing emojis and said something to the effect of, "You thought you were helping me? Too bad he was with me last night." And that response immediately grabbed attention, but not for the reason she intended. Because while she was busy proving that Papoose was home, people pointed out something she seems incapable of seeing. Papoose spent decades showing that same kind of devotion to Remy Ma. He showed up for her during her prison sentence. He was publicly loyal in a way that the entire hip-hop community recognized and respected. So the idea that him being home with Claressa Shields proves some kind of victory does not actually convince the audience of anything, because the audience has already seen him be devoted to somebody else for 20 years. The bar is not, is he home tonight? The bar is he home every night, and is the home his, and is the relationship built on a foundation that can survive without a live stream to prop it up? From there the conversation became even more unusual. Claressa Shields claimed that she and Papoose had more important things to do than go out, but people immediately looked at her online activity and questioned that statement. Because instead of being busy with important things, she appeared to be checking direct messages, reading comments, monitoring the Thesis 50 page, keeping tabs on Cardi B's page, and watching everything involving Remy Ma. The evidence of her own activity contradicted her own claims, and the audience was not shy about pointing that out. They described the behavior as obsessive. They argued that Claressa Shields and Papoose spend more time watching what Remy Ma and 50 Cent are doing than focusing on their own lives, their own careers, and their own relationship. And the frustration in those observations comes from a place of genuine confusion, because Claressa Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist, an undisputed boxing champion, one of the most accomplished athletes in her sports history. She has achievements that most people will never come close to. And yet the conversation attached to her name right now is not about any of that. It is about direct messages, middle finger emojis, deleted reposts, and a relationship with a man who is still legally bound to another woman. The user was not done either. They replied that Pap was not the type to repost that kind of content, that he was there at the show, and they compared it to previous situations, mentioning a fur coat incident and another birthday event, suggesting he had been present at those as well. They referenced a birthday party, and while it is not entirely clear which birthday they meant, the publicly known information suggests Papoose attended a birthday celebration where Remy Ma was also present, though no photos of them together were released. The user ended the conversation with a final message that said something to the effect of, "Bye, you will be waiting forever for a divorce that is never coming, it is public record." And they questioned why Papoose would be reposting content from Thesis 50 unless he was paying extremely close attention to everything surrounding Remy Ma and the online conversation around her. And that is where the exchange ended, but the fallout was just beginning. The comment sections across every platform filled up within hours, and several responses stood out because they reflected what a significant portion of the audience was thinking. One rumor that circulated on another blog claimed that everyone involved had actually been at the concert, that Papoose was sitting in the front row while Remy Ma was in Cardi B's VIP section, and that Remy started rapping Cardi's lyrics after noticing him. But there is no publicly available photo or video confirming that Papoose attended the event, so those claims remain unverified rumors rather than established facts, and it is important to distinguish between what is confirmed and what is speculation. Another commenter wrote that if Papoose had truly been home with Claressa Shields, they personally would not have wasted time arguing with strangers online. That observation cuts to the core of the issue. The behavior contradicts the claim. If everything is fine, act like everything is fine. If your man is home, enjoy the fact that your man is home. Do not go to war with anonymous accounts to prove it. Someone else criticized Claressa Shields harshly, saying they had rarely seen someone behave that way, and arguing that the issue was not whether Papoose was using her but that she publicly shared intimate details of her private life for everyone to read. They described her as lacking integrity, carrying negative energy, appearing deeply unhappy, and needing help, adding that she showed no sense of elegance or grace. Another married woman shared her perspective, saying that a husband does not sign divorce papers until he is genuinely ready to stop being married to his wife, and she suggested Claressa Shields should think carefully about that point. Others joked that because Papoose is a Pisces, people like him never truly get over an ex, and every new relationship ends up being a rebound. And still more continued asking the same question that has become the central refrain of this entire saga. If Claressa Shields keeps insisting it is called divorce, then where is the actual divorce? Even if paperwork was supposedly filed at some point, critics say there has not been any visible progress in the legal process. There is no finalized divorce decree. And since Papoose and Remy Ma share a minor child, people also question why there have not been public developments involving parenting arrangements or related proceedings. Those observations continue fueling speculation, and many believe Claressa Shields has accepted everything Papoose has told her without questioning it, without demanding proof, without pushing for the kind of concrete action that would validate the narrative she has been selling. Some think Papoose may even be trying to shield Claressa Shields from public criticism, although that becomes difficult when she is constantly active online, constantly responding to critics, constantly jumping into arguments, and constantly ready for conflict whenever someone challenges her version of events. That pattern has become impossible for people to ignore, and it is a pattern that extends beyond just this one incident. Another criticism that repeatedly comes up is the way Claressa Shields expresses herself publicly. Many people describe her approach as overly aggressive, lacking refinement, and frequently crossing the line into territory that undermines the image she is trying to project. Over time, a noticeable pattern has emerged where whenever she feels her relationship with Papoose is being threatened, she tends to respond in an extremely personal and confrontational way. People point back to her appearance on The Breakfast Club, where she spoke confidently about herself while making comments about her private life that many felt were inappropriate for that setting. Similar remarks came up during her conversation with Angela Yee. She implied she did not need to present herself as a relationship expert, but suggested that if someone does not satisfy their partner, another woman eventually will. Critics argue that those kinds of statements do not actually prove a relationship is healthy or secure, despite the message she is trying to send. Others have also questioned how those comments align with her public statements about faith. If someone presents themselves as devoted to God, many people believe that constantly discussing explicit aspects of a relationship online, or using intimate topics to elevate themselves over someone else, does not match that image. And that contradiction is another reason this situation continues generating criticism. Remy Ma previously said that Papoose cares deeply about his public image, which makes some observers wonder why he is allowing these conversations to continue without addressing them. Instead, Claressa Shields keeps speaking openly about extremely personal matters, and many viewers say they simply are not interested in hearing those details because they do not find them impressive or something to envy. Another question that gets asked repeatedly is why Claressa Shields and Papoose appear so focused on both Remy Ma and 50 Cent. Critics describe the behavior as obsessive, arguing that they spend too much time watching what other people are doing instead of focusing on their own lives. According to that viewpoint, they are more invested in following updates about Remy and 50 Cent than anything else, allowing those situations to affect their emotions before projecting that frustration onto others. People also question why Claressa Shields' music has not generated much attention. Some pointed to her explanation about streaming issues, while others argue that excuse will not matter once the music becomes fully available. Their opinion is that audiences simply are not interested in promoting everything surrounding this ongoing controversy involving a man who is still legally married. And here is where the bigger picture comes into focus, because when you step back and look at all of this together, the pattern is unmistakable. Remy Ma does not have to do a single thing to trigger Claressa Shields. She just has to exist. Show up to a concert, get a shout-out from Cardi B, look incredible, walk away unbothered, and Claressa spirals into direct messages, hostile responses, public arguments, and a full crash-out that ends up on every blog by morning. Meanwhile, nobody is streaming Claressa Shields' music. Nobody is talking about her boxing accomplishments. The only conversation attached to her name right now is this drama, Papoose, Remy Ma, and behavior that a self-proclaimed role model for young girls should be genuinely embarrassed by. And Papoose, The man who Remy said cares deeply about his public image, is watching all of this unfold and saying absolutely nothing. He is going down with this ship in complete silence while the woman he is with types explicit content and hostile messages to strangers trying to prove he was home. The contrast between the two women in this situation is the loudest part of the entire story. Remy Ma got the shout-out, got the crowd, got the Cardi B hug, got the Gucci, got the viral moment, and did not type a single word in a single stranger's direct messages for any of it. She did not need to. She did not feel compelled to. She was not sitting at home monitoring blogs and scrolling through TSIS 50 to track what people were saying about somebody else's night out. She was out living her life, receiving love from people who genuinely respect her, and carrying herself with the kind of quiet confidence that makes the other side's behavior look even more frantic by comparison. That is the difference between the wife in this situation and the woman who showed up after. One person is being celebrated. The other is arguing with anonymous accounts at midnight. One person is booking stages and collecting cosigns. The other is checking direct messages and tracking reposts. One person is rebuilding a career on her own terms. The other is performing a relationship that has zero legal recognition while the actual wife is being shouted out at concerts in full Gucci looking like she has not lost a single night of sleep over any of this. And here is the truth that I think a lot of people are starting to sense but maybe have not fully articulated yet. The reason Claressa Shields keeps crashing out is not because she is a bad person. It is because the position she is in is structurally unsustainable. You cannot build a public identity around being the new woman in a man's life when that man is still legally married to somebody the culture respects. You cannot claim you have moved on when every single one of your actions demonstrates that you are tracking the wife's movements, monitoring her public appearances, and spiraling every time she receives love from people you wish would love you. You cannot promise growth and then demonstrate the exact opposite behavior within days of making the promise. The gap between what Claressa Shields says and what Claressa Shields does is not a minor inconsistency. It is a chasm, and every time she crashes out like this, the chasm gets wider, and the audience sees more clearly that the narrative she has been selling does not match the reality she is living. And the divorce question is the anchor that keeps pulling her back down. You cannot keep saying it is called divorce when there is no divorce. That is called a filing, and a filing without progression is called a wish. Wishes are not court orders. Wishes do not dissolve marriages. Wishes do not create legal recognition for a relationship that currently has none. And as long as Claressa Shields continues to wave the divorce claim around like it means something while the paperwork sits frozen, the audience is going to keep pointing at the gap between the claim and the reality and asking the same question they have been asking for months. Where is the divorce? Where is the decree? Where is the progress? Where are the court dates? Where is the parenting plan? Where is any single piece of evidence that this process is actually moving forward? And the silence in response to those questions is louder than any direct message she has ever typed. Many observers continue pointing to the same facts. There is no finalized divorce decree. There are no active divorce hearings that anyone can identify. There is no clear indication that the legal process has reached a conclusion. Because of that, some believe Claressa Shields already understands the reality of the situation but still wants to prove that her relationship with Papoose will last despite the criticism. Whether that is true or not, plenty of people remain skeptical about how everything will eventually play out. Some believe that regardless of whether Papoose and Remy Ma officially divorce in the future, these kinds of relationships rarely end peacefully. According to that perspective, there will always be uncertainty about whether someone returns to a previous partner or becomes involved with someone new. That ongoing uncertainty is why many people do not believe the situation has a positive ending. And let me be clear about something before we wrap this up, because I think it needs to be said. Nobody is arguing that Claressa Shields is not a phenomenal athlete. She is. Her accomplishments in the boxing ring are extraordinary, and they deserve to be the dominant conversation attached to her name. But they are not. They are not because she keeps choosing behavior that replaces the championship narrative with a drama narrative. Every time she goes into somebody's direct messages and crashes out, that becomes the story. Every time she claims growth and then contradicts it within a week, that becomes the story. Every time she invokes a divorce that does not exist, that becomes the story. And the tragedy is that she is doing this to herself. Remy Ma is not making her type hostile messages to strangers. Cardi B is not making her monitor T-Sis 50 for reposts about the concert. 50 Cent is not making her claim legal action that never materializes. These are choices. Repeated choices. Compounding choices. And the compounding effect is that the public's perception of Claressa Shields is being shaped not by her medals, not by her fights, not by her historic achievements, but by the pattern of behavior she cannot seem to break. So where does this go from here? Honestly, the trajectory is not hard to map. As long as Remy Ma continues to exist publicly, continues to receive love from the culture, continues to show up at events looking unbothered and celebrated, the triggers will keep firing. And as long as the triggers keep firing, Claressa Shields will keep finding herself in direct messages, in arguments, in crash-outs that make the blogs and damage her brand. And as long as Papoose stays silent while all of this happens, the audience will continue to view him as a man who is either unable or unwilling to step in and redirect the narrative, which only reinforces the perception that the relationship is built on performance rather than substance. The one variable that could change everything is the divorce. If paperwork actually moves, if a decree is finalized, if the legal process reaches a conclusion, then the entire dynamic shifts. Claressa Shields would finally have the legal standing she has been claiming. The audience's central question would be answered. The narrative would have a foundation to stand on. But until that happens, and based on the current evidence it is not happening, every claim about divorce is just words. And words without action, in the court of public opinion, do not carry weight. So I want to hear from you. I genuinely want to know what you think about all of this. First, Claressa Shields sat on Angela Yee's show and promised she was done responding to people online. How many more crash-outs do we have to witness before she actually keeps that promise, or is it simply impossible for her to stop at this point? Is the pattern too deep? Is the reflex too strong? Has she built identity around confrontation that she cannot separate herself from even when she tries? Second, do you think Papoose was actually home that night, or does the fact that Claressa Shields felt the need to prove it in a complete stranger's direct messages already tell us everything we need to know about the security of that relationship? Because secure people do not argue with strangers about where their partner was sleeping. They just do not. And third, maybe the most important question of all, at what point does the audience stop giving Claressa Shields the benefit of the doubt? At what point do the repeated patterns, the broken promises, the claims that never materialize, and the behavior that contradicts every public statement override whatever goodwill her athletic achievements have built? When does the pattern become the story instead of the exception? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and this conversation is way too important to leave unresolved. If you made it this far, you already know this situation is far from over. The next chapter is already loading, and based on the trajectory we just mapped out, it is going to be messier, louder, and more revealing than anything we have seen so far. Hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next breakdown. Because trust me, there will be a next breakdown. There always is with this story. And when it happens, I will be right here walking you through every layer, every receipt, and every detail. Stay sharp, stay locked in, and remember something that this entire saga keeps proving over and over again. The loudest person in the room is almost never the one holding the actual power. Sometimes the loudest person in the room is just the one who is most afraid of what happens when the room goes quiet.